Hi everybody, we'll be starting our webinar in about 1 minute. We'll start the webinar in about 1 minute. Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar this evening, which is Costa Rica a good investment opportunity? So thank you everybody for coming along. I guess it's good morning if you're on the Pacific Seaboard, good afternoon if you're on the Eastern Seaboard, good evening if you're in Europe, and if you're in Asia, well, thank you for staying up so late because it's certainly nighttime for you. We hold these webinars every Thursday and at this time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you visit our website, www.costaricainvest.ie, you can see on the front page what our upcoming webinars are. We do record the webinars as well, and if you have a look in this area of the website, in the free downloads and media area, you can always get the recordings of previous webinars. Now, for those of you who are perhaps on a webinar for the first time, there's a little control box on the right-hand side of your screen, and in that control box there's an area that you can type in questions. We will have some time for some questions at the end of the webinar, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. But what I always suggest to people is if there's something that I don't cover clearly or a question that pops into mind in the course of the webinar, please feel free to type that question into the little control panel there, into the little question box, and I'll get to as many of those questions as I can at the end of the webinar. Now, the area that we're going to cover today is Costa Rica, a good investment opportunity. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, of course, we're going to talk about Costa Rica. We're going to talk about the economy of Costa Rica. We're going to talk about real estate. And we're going to start off by covering Costa Rica in some detail. First of all, a little bit about me. My name is James Cahill. My company is Costa Rica Invest. We're an international sales and marketing company, and we have for the past 5 years specialized in selling Costa Rican investments. We now have consultants working all around the world in Canada, USA, United Kingdom, Costa Rica, Ireland, United Arab Emirates, and Spain. Specifically, we've been involved in ecological hybrid investment and development opportunities. The companies that we choose to work with all have a very high level of success, and we're sticklers for details, and we always do a thorough due diligence before agreeing to work with or represent any company. In addition to selling, we're a referral service for all things Costa Rica, including legal assistance, immigration, travel, investment, and banking advice. And if you need any assistance in any of those areas, we'd be delighted to help you as well. So let's jump right in. I know that many of you on the call this evening are very familiar with Costa Rica, but for those of you who aren't, a little bit of background. Costa Rica, where is it? Well, it's in Central America. It's the oldest democracy in Central and Southern America. It has more teachers than policemen and has no army. They abolished their army in 1948. It's often referred to as the Switzerland of Latin America, and it has a literacy rate of 96%. This year, they're going to spend more than 25% of their entire national budget on education. Now, Costa Rica has a fantastic climate. It's tropical year-round and has many microclimates. It's located at the intersection of two very large continents, obviously North and South America, and it contains over 5% of the world's biodiversity. That's an incredible 1 in 20 of every living thing on this planet. Costa Rica also ranks really highly in a number of polls. 2 years ago, or I should say 3 years ago now, they were ranked 5th in the world in terms of environmental performance. Last year, they were ranked 3rd in the world in terms of environmental performance, and they plan to be number 1. That study is carried out every year by Yale University. That's 3rd in the world in terms of environmental performance. They're ranked 7th in the world as the 7th most socially and politically stable country. And that study was carried out by the Economist Intelligence Unit. And that's an incredible fact when I mention it to people. Most people simply don't believe it, that the 7th most politically and socially stable country in the world is located in Costa Rica. Many people are shocked by that, but it's true. And that country is Costa Rica. Costa Rica is ranked number 1 in the Happy Planet Index. And this is a new way of looking at wealth. This is carried out by the New Economics Foundation Research Group. And Costa Rica is number 1 by a street. Now, I thought I'd play a little bit of a short video from Nick Marks from the New Economics Foundation to give you a little background on this assessment of Costa Rica and why the New Economics Foundation ranks it as number 1 in the world in the Happy Planet Index. Now, I do know that many of you on the call this evening are specifically investors. However, what I would encourage you to do is to listen to what Nick Marks is saying and think of the value that this type of ranking brings to people who plan to have a home in Costa Rica, because it gives a really good assessment of what the quality of living in Costa Rica is. So let's move on to that. I'm just going to bring up the video now, and then once I've got the video up and running, we'll get it playing. It's slightly jerky. Unfortunately, it's just the way it appears, but it's really the words from Nick Marks that we're interested in. So we'll get Nick Marks on live now and make him live for you.
Martin Luther King did not say, "I have a nightmare," when he inspired the civil rights movements. He said, "I have a dream." And I have a dream. I have a dream that we can stop thinking that the future will be a nightmare. And this is going to be a challenge, because if you think of every major blockbusting film of recent times, nearly all of its visions for humanity are apocalyptic. I think this film is one of the hardest watches of modern times, The Road. It's a beautiful piece of filmmaking, but everything is desolate. Everything is dead. And just a father and son trying to survive, walking along the road. And I think the environmental movement, of which I am a part of, has been complicit in creating this vision of the future. For too long, we have peddled a nightmarish vision of what's going to happen. We have focused on the worst case scenario. We have focused on the problems. And we have not thought enough about the solutions. We've used fear, if you like, to grab people's attention. And any psychologist will tell you that fear in the organism is linked to the flight mechanism. It's part of the fight and flight mechanism. That when an animal is frightened, think of a deer. A deer freezes very, very still, poised to run away. And I think that's what we're doing when we're asking people to engage with our agenda around environmental degradation and climate change. People are freezing and running away because we're using fear. And I think the environmental movement has to grow up and start to think about what progress is. What would it be like to be improving the human lot? And one of the problems that we face, I think, is that the only people that cornered the market in terms of progress is a financial definition of what progress is, an economic definition of what progress is. That somehow, if we get the right numbers to go up, we're going to be better off. Whether that's on the stock market, whether that's with GDP and economic growth, that somehow life is going to get better. This is somehow appealing to human greed instead of fear, that more is better. Come on, in the Western world we have enough. Maybe some parts of the world don't, but we have enough. And we've known for a long time that this is not a good measure of the welfare of nations. In fact, the architect of our national accounting system, Simon Kuznets, in the 1930s said that a nation's welfare can scarcely be inferred from their national income. But we've created a national accounting system which is firmly based on production and producing stuff. And indeed, this is probably historical. It had its time. In the Second World War, we needed to produce a lot of stuff. And indeed, we were so successful at producing certain types of stuff that we destroyed a lot of Europe and we had to rebuild it afterwards. And so our national accounting system became fixated on what we can produce. But as early as 1968, this visionary man, Robert Kennedy, at the start of his ill-fated presidential campaign, gave the most eloquent deconstruction of gross national product that ever has been. And he finished his talk with the phrase that the gross national product measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. How crazy is that our measure of progress, our dominant measure of progress in society, is measuring everything except that which makes life worthwhile? I believe if Kennedy was alive today, he would be asking statisticians such as myself to go out and find out what makes life worthwhile. He'd be asking us to redesign our national accounting system to be based upon such important things as social justice, sustainability, and people's well-being. And actually, social scientists have already gone out and asked these questions around the world. This is from a global survey. It's asking people, what do they want? And unsurprisingly, people all around the world say that what they want is happiness for themselves, for their families, their children, their communities. Okay, they think money is slightly important. It's there. But it's not nearly as important as happiness. And it's not nearly as important as love. We all need to love and be loved in life. It's not nearly as important as health. We want to be healthy and live a full life. These seem to be natural human aspirations. Why are statisticians not measuring that? Why are we not thinking of the progress of nations in these terms, instead of just how much stuff we have? And really, this is what I've done with my adult life, is think about how do we measure happiness, how do we measure well-being, how can we do that within environmental limits? And we created at the organization I work for, the New Economics Foundation, something we called the Happy Planet Index. Because we think people should be happy and the planet should be happy. Why don't we create a measure of progress that shows that? And what we do is we say that the ultimate outcome of a nation is how successful is it at creating happy and healthy lives for its citizens. That should be the goal of every nation on the planet. But we have to remember that there's a fundamental input to that, and that is how many of the planet's resources we use. We all have one planet. We all have to share it. It is the ultimate scarce resource, the one planet that we share. And economics is very interested in scarcity. When it has a scarce resource that it wants to turn into a desirable outcome, it thinks in terms of efficiency. It thinks in terms of how much bang do we get for our buck. And this is a measure of how much well-being we get for our planetary resource use. It is an efficiency measure. And probably the easiest way to show you that is to show you this graph. Running horizontally along the graph is ecological footprint, which is a measure of how much resources we use and how much pressure we put on the planet. More is bad. Running vertically upwards is a measure called happy life years. It's about the well-being of nations. It's like a happiness-adjusted life expectancy. It's like quality and quantity of life in nations. And the yellow dot there you see is the global average. Now there's a huge array of nations around that global average. To the top right of the graph are countries which are doing reasonably well in producing well-being, but they're using a lot of planet to get there. They are the USA, other Western countries going across in those triangles, and a few Gulf states in there actually. Conversely, at the bottom left of the graph are countries that are not producing much well-being, typically sub-Saharan Africa. In Hobbesian terms, life is short and brutish there. Average life expectancy in many of these countries is only 40 years. Malaria, HIV, AIDS are killing a lot of people in these regions of the world. But now for the good news. There are some countries up there, yellow triangles, that are doing better than global average, that are heading up towards the top left of the graph. This is an aspirational graph. We want to be top left, where good lives don't cost the earth. They're Latin American. The country on its own, up at the top, is a place I haven't been to. Maybe some of you have. Costa Rica. Costa Rica. Average life expectancy is 78.5 years. That is longer than in the USA. They are, according to the latest Gallup World Poll, the happiest nation on the planet than anybody, more than Switzerland and Denmark. They are the happiest place. They are doing that on a quarter of the resources that are used typically in Western world. A quarter of the resources. What's going on there? What's happening in Costa Rica? We can look at some of the data. 99% of their electricity comes from renewable resources. Their government is one of the first to commit to be carbon neutral by 2021. They abolished the army in 1949. And they invested in social programs, health and education. They have one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America and in the world. And they have that Latin vibe, don't they? They have the social connectedness. The challenge is that possibly, and the thing we might have to think about, is that the future might not be North American, might not be Western European. It might be Latin American.
So we might move on from there. That's a different way of looking at the wealth of a nation. And as I mentioned, many of you on the call this evening are pure investors. However, what I'd encourage you to take from that is, that many people who are seeking homes, seeking their future lives in Costa Rica, will be looking to these things that Nick Marks is talking about: a better quality of living, a happier place, the happiest place on earth, the happiest population on earth. So we've covered this one already, that Costa Rica is the 7th most socially and politically stable country in the world. Let's move on to this next fact about Costa Rica. It's the most prosperous country in Latin America, and that study is carried out every year by the Legatum Prosperity Index. Costa Rica has preserved more than 25% of its surface area as natural park and forest reserve, never to be developed. And it plans to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021, which is the 200th anniversary of their independence. More than 95% of Costa Rica's energy requirements come from renewable resources. Now, 20 years ago, they invested hugely in hydroelectric, wind and geothermal power. At the time, other countries thought they were crazy because these were very expensive technologies, and coal and oil were cheap at the time. Why was Costa Rica investing in these? Well, they took a very long-term view towards their energy requirements, and what they'd done was that they recognized that there were two areas of government in conflict. The two areas of government that were in conflict were the Department of Energy and the Department of the Environment. The Department of Energy was looking for cheap energy, and unfortunately, that often came at the cost or at a significant cost to the environment. So what they did 20 years ago was that they put one minister in charge of both. He then took a 50-year view as to their energy requirements. They invested hugely in wind, water, and geothermal power. Now more than 95% of their energy comes from these sustainable renewable resources, and other countries look to Costa Rica and those inspired decisions that they made. So Costa Rica may be a small country, but it's got very, very big goals. They plan, as I mentioned, to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021. And they've got various channels in place to achieve this, one of which is that they planted 7 million trees last year. That's more per head of population than anywhere else in the world. But to achieve this carbon neutrality, they're going to have to plant more trees and preserve even more land, and that's going to add to the value of existing development land by reducing the amount of existing development land that's there. Now, Costa Rica is a very attractive tourist destination, and the tourism industry was worth over $2 billion to Costa Rica last year. And they intend to concentrate even further on this and to grow specifically their ecotourism in the future. And tourism in Costa Rica is booming. Just look on TV. Where do the celebs go on holidays? Costa Rica. Last year, tourist numbers were up by 9.2% in 2010 when compared to 2009, and they're increasing even more this year. But Costa Rica is not interested in the one-off visitor. They want people to come again and again, and preferably own a home in Costa Rica. To do this, they've made the process of emigrating to Costa Rica very, very straightforward. And you and I have the same land and property ownership rights as a Costa Rican citizen, and that's enshrined in the Constitution. You and I can own and buy and sell property in Costa Rica without restriction. And this makes Costa Rica very, very different to many of its neighbors, where you can't own property in your own name, and you require complex structures with local partners in order to purchase property. And the exodus has already begun. More than 1% of the population is already North American expatriates and retirees, and more are flocking southward daily. And why are they coming to Costa Rica? Well, they're looking for a lower cost of living, stability, a stable political environment, access to great health care, and a fantastic climate. The cost of living in Costa Rica is about 50% of the cost of living in Canada and the USA, and healthcare is a fraction of the price. In fact, so much so that medical tourism in Costa Rica is now a booming business. So you can imagine living in a beautiful climate, in a safe place with great healthcare for a fraction of your current cost of living. But Costa Rica is not just a pretty place to come and sit on the beach. It's also diversified its economy and now generates a large portion of its revenue through high-tech medical and other manufacturing industries. Companies like Microsoft, Dell, Hewlett, Packard, Intel, Johnson & Johnson all have their Central and Southern American headquarters in Costa Rica. And why are they located in and locating in Costa Rica? Well, a combination of political stability, lucrative tax breaks, a very highly educated workforce, and low labor costs. Now, these companies have direct investments in Costa Rica totaling billions and billions of dollars, and it's increasing every day. So needless to say, you don't need to ask why they're investing so many dollars in Costa Rica, because they know that it's stable, it's safe, it's secure, that it's got a very well-educated workforce, and they can get a great return on their money. That's why they're doing it. But the taxation benefits don't just apply to multinationals. Costa Rica is a personal tax haven, and with planning, you can achieve a very, very low or even a no tax situation for yourself and your family. How's the economy of Costa Rica going? Well, last year, 2010, the IMF issued a very, very positive report about Costa Rica. They said that economic recovery in Costa Rica was firmly underway, that economic growth rose in the second half of 2009 and remained strong in the first quarter of 2010, and that a supportive fiscal policy had boosted recovery and inflation had moved to low levels. So, were the IMF correct in the report? Well, absolutely they were. And exports last year from Costa Rica were up by 16.8% when compared to 2009. So in 2010, they were up by 16.8%. And in fact, the economy grew as a whole by 4.5% in 2010, and is expected to grow by 5% in 2011. Let's talk a little bit about land and real estate in Costa Rica. There are two drivers which are going to affect land prices in the short to medium term in Costa Rica. The first of which is baby boomer retirees. Over 100 million baby boomers are going to retire over the next decade. Now, some estimates suggest that up to 20% will seek to retire abroad. And when they look to retire abroad, what are they going to look for? Well, they're going to look for safety, good climate, quality healthcare, and a lower cost of living. Costa Rica ticks all of these boxes. Now, of course, Costa Rica couldn't possibly take 20 million baby boomer retirees. It only has a population of 4 million, but a significant number of them will look and are looking to Costa Rica to retire. And these boomers, as a demographic, are armed with more money than at any time in history. This spike in demand will ultimately push up prices. The second big driver for land price growth is Costa Rica's eco-plans. Do you remember that I mentioned earlier that they plan to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021? And 25% of the country is already zoned as natural park and forest reserve. Now, the aspiration to be carbon neutral means that they need to plant more trees and preserve more land. And that process has already started. And if you do a Google search, you'll see that at the beginning of the year, Costa Rica secured enough funding to preserve a further 1% of its surface area. So this process is continuing. So there's going to be less and less land available to develop in Costa Rica, and at the same time, a large influx of people armed with money to spend and wanting to be a part of the Costa Rican dream. So what have we got going on there? We've got increasing demand, reducing supply, and economics would tell us that means prices are going up. So is Costa Rica a good investment opportunity? Well, I certainly believe it is. And now we're going to move on to some very specific opportunities, which I'm just going to bring up on your screen right now. And I'm just going to put the screen on hold just for a moment whilst I bring those opportunities up. So my apologies that I need to put the screen on hold for a moment, but we'll be right to it now. Now, my apologies that there was a slight delay there, just getting the opportunities up. So the two opportunities that I'm going to introduce you to today are both on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. And first of all, just a short bit of information about the Pacific area, the Central Pacific area of Costa Rica. It is the strongest resort area in Costa Rica and the oldest. With the most developed infrastructure, including hospitals, best access to road, bridges, airports, and a new freeway from the capital, San Jose, was completed at the beginning of the year, and that has effectively halved the driving time to the Central Pacific region. So in a nutshell, we really like the Central Pacific region as an investment opportunity because of all of those things. So we're just moving on to the opportunity here now, and the first of which is Nature Walk. Now, Nature Walk is our ecological eco-mountain resort community, and it has some very, very special characteristics. First of all, it's slightly away from the beach, so you're not paying inflated beach prices. And secondly, it has a valuable commodity attached to the real estate. Now, in fact, it has more than teak attached to it, because now Nature Walk 2 has just been launched, and Nature Walk 2 has biofuels attached to it. So you've got an opportunity to combine a beautiful environment in which to have your home with an agricultural commodity growing on your land that is extremely valuable, and that agricultural commodity is teak or biofuels. So you get a double return. You've got a land investment and a commodity investment if you're just purely an investor. It's a highly ecological community with a well-developed master plan, and it's going to produce a lifestyle environment that's going to make Nature Walk the ultimate destination resort community in Costa Rica. The combination of Nature Walk 1 and Nature Walk 2 makes Nature Walk the largest eco-resort community in Central and Southern America. It has planning underway for an eco-hotel, an equestrian center, mountain spa, and of course beautiful teak homes in Nature Walk. Those homes there that you can see are made with sustainable teak, and this is our Infinity Home series. There are a number of available designs, both in the Ecological Edge Home series and in the Affinity Home series, but of course you can have a bespoke home built as well. Now, Nature Walk is still very affordable. You can still purchase 3 lots for under $100,000, and you can expect that the returns from the teak, for instance, in the teak aspect of Nature Walk, will pay for your purchase in a 7-year period. So the land effectively becomes a free bet for you. Now, if you're a pure investor, you could sell that land on, Or alternately, if you plan to have a home on it, you can build your beautiful dream home on one of those lots and perhaps sell the other lots on, or perhaps grow more teak on them. There are all sorts of opportunities. This is what we call a hybrid investment opportunity because it's combining land and an agricultural commodity. As I mentioned, Nature Walk 2 has biofuels growing on it. The difference between the biofuels and the teak is that the teak will give you a once-off lump sum return, of course, when it's harvested, whereas the biofuels will give you a return every year. Now, investments in some categories of lots in Nature Walk is extremely limited, so we encourage you to take advantage while inventory still exists and prices are still reasonable. Nature Walk will also launch a hotel condominium offer over the next month or two, and we already have a number of people on the standby waiting list for that. So if that is of interest to you, please let us know. Now, for those of you who would like to have an immediate residence or rental vacation property, we have Hacienda Pacifica. Hacienda Pacifica is a 20-unit gated community project with 6 already sold and 14 condominiums still available. These are brand new. They were completed about 2 months ago. And these condominiums are value priced and tens of thousands less than other comparable condominiums in the area. Here are just some of the features. It's $175,000 for 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 1,600 square feet of total area. They are fully furnished and equipped. And if you're buying these as a vacation rental, you're going to love them because they rent very, very easily. And we can go over those rental numbers offline as you wish. They're security entrance and gated, and financing is available on these units with a 25% down payment. They're located in Quepos, which is right next to Manuel Antonio. Effectively, if you know that area, Quepos and Manuel Antonio are 2 towns that are right on top of one another, right beside one another. And Manuel Antonio has the national park, the most famous national park in Costa Rica. It's the smallest national park in Costa Rica, but it receives the most visitors every year. And Quepos has a brand new marina, which is under construction. You can see some images of the marina just there. So how do you take advantage of these opportunities? Well, first thing you need to do is contact us and speak with one of our consultants. They'll discuss your particular needs with you and really get to understand what you're looking for and what your investment needs are. They can then direct you to the information you require to make a decision as to whether the property that they have suggested is the right one for you. If you'd like to see before you buy, we have a fly and buy program, and our sales consultants can explain this to you as well. You can take advantage of a 5-day, 4-night tour of the Central Pacific region of Costa Rica, and if you end up confirming your purchase in one of our fly and buy program properties, the developer will pick up your travel costs. This is only available to those of you who can travel in the near term within 21 days. So, how do you get in contact with us? Well, it's very easy. Put up our contact details here. So send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie or give us a call. The European number is 3531-272-4184, or if you're located in the USA, the toll-free number is 866-990-1123. Just send us a quick email with some details about yourself, and we'll put you in contact with your local consultant, and they can get in contact with you and really get to know what you're looking for. So if you're seriously interested in Costa Rica as an investment opportunity, really now is the time to take action. The economy is growing strongly in Costa Rica. Demand is going up. The amount of land available and property available in Costa Rica is going down. That means the prices are going up, and they're only going one way. So if you're a pure investor, now's the time to get involved. Or if you plan to have a home in Costa Rica at some time in the future, again, now is really the time to make your move, because prices are going up and will continue to rise, particularly with increased demand from baby boomers and the reducing supply of development land in Costa Rica as well. So at this point, I normally take some questions, and I can see we've got a couple of questions in there already. So I'm going to run through some of those. Now, as I mentioned, on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a little question or a little control panel, and in that area you can type in any questions, anything that comes to mind at all, anything to do with Costa Rica or owning property in Costa Rica or buying property or any of the particular projects I mentioned. Just type away, and I'll get to as many questions as I can over the next 10 minutes or so. So let me just bring up the first questions now. Okay, first question we have is, where is Nature Walk? Okay, Nature Walk is located just outside of Jaco. Jaco is perhaps the oldest tourist development or tourist developed town in Costa Rica. It's in the Central Pacific area. It's quite close to where the new highway reaches the Central Pacific. So the driving time from San Jose to Jaco has effectively halved since that new highway has opened. So you can now effectively drive all the way to Jaco, well, a few miles north of Jaco and then down to Jaco on the new highway. And then Nature Walk is located in the hills behind Jaco. It's about 15 kilometers as the crow flies from Jaco, but it is a 30 to 35 minute drive. The great advantage to being located in the hills is that down on the beach it gets very hot, particularly in the dry season. In the hills the temperature is just that little bit lower and you do get a nice breeze blowing through. Nature Walk's a very, very, very beautiful development. Very ecological, very sustainable. All sorts of opportunities available there. Whether you're a pure investor, plan to buy some lots, take the agricultural yield from the lots. As I mentioned, some of the lots have teak growing on them. That teak will be ready for harvest in 7 years. Some of the lots have biofuels growing on them. That will give you an annual return. So if you're a pure investor, you can get a return from your land as you hold it, and then you could sell the land on. Alternately, you could build a home on the land yourself if you plan to have a home there. There are a number of home designs available, or you can have a bespoke home. As I mentioned, the Carrara National Eco Lodge is the condo hotel that's planned for Nature Walk, and we already have a waiting list of people who are interested in having condos in that Carrara National Eco Lodge development. So there really are a whole range of opportunities available in Nature Walk. Okay. Next question we've got is, what is teak? Well, teak is a tropical hardwood. It only grows in the tropics. It is a very, very expensive hardwood and in high demand. There are a number of teak is used typically in furniture manufacturing, high-end boat building, so it's a very expensive timber. In fact, one of the most expensive timbers you can buy. It's actually in low supply, and the reason it's in low supply is that 95% of the world's teak currently comes from jungle sources. And as we know, world opinion is moving against us logging our jungles, quite rightly. And so now that the teak is having to come from plantation sources. Now, teak is a slow-growing tree. It takes 20 years to grow to a size suitable for logging. And Nature Walk is a teak plantation. So this is plantation teak. It's not jungle teak. It's plantation teak. And it's scheduled for logging when it gets to 20 years of age. The teak is currently 13 years of age. As I briefly covered, you would expect if you, at the current pricing in Nature Walk, if you purchased a lot in Nature Walk in 7 years, at the current pricing of teak, at today's current pricing, without any increase in teak prices, the returns from the teak should cover the cost of purchase of the lot. So effectively, you're getting a lot for free. Some of the larger lots, you're getting a very significant return from the lot on top of the, covering the cost of purchase of the lot. There are all sorts of opportunities there. As I mentioned, in Nature Walk, there are also biofuel lots, and the biofuels, the difference between the teak and the biofuels, the teak gives you a lump sum return in 7 years, the biofuels give you a return each and every year. Okay. The next question we have, where are the condos, Hacienda Pacifica condos? Okay, well, they're located in Quepos. Again, it's in the Central Pacific area. Quepos is right on the sea. Quepos and Manuel Antonio are effectively one town. Manuel Antonio is very, very famous in Costa Rica because of its national park. Manuel Antonio National Park, I think I mentioned already, it's actually the smallest national park in Costa Rica, but it is extremely popular, particularly because it has white sandy beaches, very beautiful white sandy beaches. So lots of people visit Manuel Antonio National Park, spend the day in the park and part of the day on the beach. It's very, very beautiful. And Quepos is the town that borders Manuel Antonio. And so Quepos is right beside Manuel Antonio. These condos are just on the outskirts, if you like, the suburbs of Quepos, but you're literally only 2 kilometers from the sea, so you're walking distance from the sea, and you can walk just right into the village of Quepos. Quepos is quite a fun town. It was a banana plantation town initially. There were huge banana plantations. And then the banana plantations were replaced in the main with palm plantations. And so there are not too many banana plantations there now. But 100 years ago, Quepos was a banana plantation town. Now it's a palm plantation town. Lots of bars and restaurants. It's quite a fun town, quite a busy town. Lots of smaller hotels in Quepos. And then, of course, Manuel Antonio has lots of hotels and facilities as well. As I mentioned, Manuel Antonio and Quepos border right one on top of the other. These Hacienda Pacifica condos are available for immediate purchase, and you could move in tomorrow if you wished. They're fully furnished and have all of the facilities in there, fridges, tables, chairs, everything that you need. And they really are priced to sell. They're tens of thousands less than any other comparable condos in the area, built by a very reputable builder in Costa Rica. And as I mentioned, they were completed about 2.5 months ago, and 6 of them are sold already out of the 20, so there are 14 remaining. So if you're interested in those, certainly just let us know. And well, ideally, we would get on a plane, go down, have a look, and see if they are what you need. So that's Hacienda Pacifica. Okay. The next question we have is there property tax in Costa Rica? Yes, there is property tax in Costa Rica. Property tax in Costa Rica is 0.25% of the purchase price or the value of the property. 0.25% of the purchase price or the value of the property. So for most people, it's a very, very small tax, running to no more than a couple of $100 per year. Okay. Next question is, can I live permanently in Costa Rica? Well, yes, you can. You can get a Costa Rican residency. There are a number of different types of Costa Rican residency available. If you're over the age of 60, you can apply for a retirement or a pensionado residency. And if there are some specific requirements, you need to be in receipt of over $1,000 US per month in pension income, and it needs to be from an approved pension provider. And there's quite a bit of red tape involved. The process takes about a year, but that's how you get those pension residency. Alternatively, you can get an investor residency. That can be structured around a home purchase, actually. What many people opt for is they don't spend all of their time in Costa Rica, and typically as a US citizen or Canadian citizen or European citizen, you get a 90-day tourist visa. So what many people choose to do is that they come and they stay for 85 days and then perhaps pop over the border for a couple of days and then come back and get a renewed visa for another 90 days. And that's the way many people do it. But yes, in a nutshell, you can get Costa Rican residency. There are a number of options open to you. There are some specialist lawyers who can advise you on that and advise you on the options that are open to you. And if that's an area that is of interest, please let me know, because we can put you in contact with one of our specialist lawyers, and they can have a chat with you and explain your options and start the process. Typically, as I mentioned, it takes about a year to run through the process, so it's not quick. It's not instant, it's not quick. It does take about a year, quite a bit of red tape, but you get there in the end. The advantages to being a Costa Rican resident is that you don't have to get on the plane and leave every 85 or 90 days. You can stay there year-round. You don't get to vote in the national elections. You don't get to vote in any elections. But otherwise, all of the other facilities of a Costa Rican citizen, effectively you get all of those. You get access to all of those facilities. Next question we've got is, how is Costa Rican healthcare? Costa Rica has excellent healthcare. In fact, so much so that medical tourism really is a booming industry in Costa Rica right now. Many people visit Costa Rica for their medical care and for their dental care. Many of the doctors, nurses, dentists are U.S. trained. Many of the private hospitals in Costa Rica are, U.S. Run, owned, sponsored, U.S. trained medical staff in there. Medical care in Costa Rica is a fraction of the price. There is an excellent national medical system in Costa Rica, even as a non-Costa Rican resident or non-Costa Rican citizen, you can subscribe to that. It's not very expensive, costs a couple of $100 a month, but that can give you access to the national medical program in Costa Rica, which really is excellent. It has one of the best national medical schemes or programs available in the world. So you've got two sort of separate medical systems running in tandem in Costa Rica. You've got the private and the national is very, very good. The only disadvantage in the national is that effectively if you go along, you have to join a queue. If you go private, there's no queuing. So that's the fundamental difference between the two. Okay. All right. I think we've got through most of the questions, and I see we're reaching our 45-minute deadline. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I do hope that this has given you a little insight into Costa Rica and the investment opportunity that it provides. If you are interested in investing in Costa Rica, really now is, even if you plan to have a home there in 5 years, 10 years, now is the time to take action, because prices are going up. There's going to be increasing demand from baby boomers. There's going to be reducing supply. Now is the time to take action. Of course, when it comes to investing in land or in property, location is the secret. Get the right location. You need to make sure that you're buying in the right location if you're a pure investor. And of course, if you plan to live there yourself, it needs to be the right location for you. So as I mentioned, to contact us, just send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie, or alternately, just give us a call, 866-990-1123 if you're in the States, or if you're in Europe, 353-127-4184, and we'll put you in contact with the consultant closest to you. They'll really get an understanding, have a chat with you, really get an understanding of what you're trying to achieve, what your aims and aspirations are, and then they can provide you with some information and hopefully help you find the ideal property for you. So thank you very much for attending, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.